Thank you for taking time. I know there are lots of sessions out there today. I know you've probably been to lots of sessions, so thanks for joining us here today. I know there have also been some evening extracurricular activities, so great to see you here in the morning, which is great. So looking forward to this session here with these gentlemen. I'll let them introduce themselves here in a moment. If today is not the best session that you've been to, hopefully it will be the most fun, so we'll try to have a little fun along the way. My name is Jesse McCabe. There I am, and I am the VP of Marketing at Data Clymer. I'll tell you a little bit about us here in a second. A little fun fact about me, I have 4 teenagers at home, yes, 13 to 18, and I realized actually that there's a streaming session that's going on, so luckily my kids are at school today, otherwise they'd probably be heckling me and everybody else here in the audience via the online piece, so anyway, I'm glad that that is not going to happen, so I think we're in a good spot. So super excited to be here with you all today. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to our panelists for joining us. Before I let them introduce themselves, just want to give you a little background on Data Clymer. So if you're not familiar with Data Clymer, we are a data consulting company that is focused on developing custom data analytics solutions for many organizations within some of the areas of focus there, some of the key verticals, sports, media, and entertainment being one of those. We help develop custom solutions that include modern data stack technologies and help organizations like these actually create business analytics, generate business analytics, and helping them make more intelligent business decisions at the end of the day. We are also one of 5 DBT Premier partners. So we have a lot of 5 Premier DBT partners. We actually have a lot of experience then. Our engineering team has a lot of experience around DBT and functionalities and what have you. So if you have any questions, feel free to come talk with us later. And this is what I like to call our NASCAR slides. You can see some of our customers across multiple different industries, and I can say NASCAR because they are actually one of our customers as well. So that is all I wanted to say about Data Clymer and myself. So let me actually get over to these gentlemen. So panelists, if you want to maybe introduce yourself, maybe give a little bit about your role. What is your role at the organization? And if you want and are so inclined, maybe a little fun fact about yourself. So Keelan, maybe I'll start with you on the far side.
Cool. I'm Keelan Smithers. I'm a data product manager of analytics engineering at the MBA, which is title soup. I know there's a lot of words there. Basically, my job is pretty solely focused on owning the DBT project and teaching the practice of analytics engineering at the MBA. We have a lot of analysts and a lot of sort of offshore consultants that build queries, schedule them, and whatnot in various sandbox databases, and bringing all that into DBT, codifying it, teaching them how to think modularly is a core part of the job.
Great. Hi, everyone. Paimon Jaberi, Managing Director of Strategy and Analytics at the Seattle Seahawks. Oversee our business strategy and analytics team, helping every part of business operations use data to run our business better. Fun fact about me probably is 5-6 years ago when I started my career in data, I never thought I would be working in data. I was planning on working in finance and investments and took a pivot to data. And really glad I did.
My name is Chavez. I'm the Senior Data Engineer for Pacer Sports and Entertainment. I oversee engineering and infrastructure, starting to bleed into everything data for the entire company. We have 4 professional teams and soon to be 2 arenas that we service over 300 plus days a year. Depending on the team, I also support sports analytics, so it's a never-ending year for us, but it's been a lot of fun coming to Indy from California. Still figuring out where I can go surfing. Lake Michigan, not a good idea in the winter if you're wondering. Did try that, doesn't go well. And I guess I'll hand it back off to Jesse.
All right, sounds good. So hopefully you all have been here for 3 days. And if you've been up to the expo, I think you've seen some puppies, we've seen some ducks, we've even seen a couple little octopus-related pieces. Up here, we're kind of continuing with the theme. We have the Seahawks. But my first question is for Jared. Help us understand what a pacer is.
So the Pacers have been around since the ABA era, back in, I believe, the early 60s when we were founded. I'm blanking on the exact year. We're named after the pace car at the Indy 500.
There you go. All right, there you go. Fun fact. More fun facts. All right, let's get to the data questions. So given where you all are and within your organization, where you all are within your data journey, what do you believe are some of the biggest data challenges that are currently facing sports organizations? And let's be honest, you're similar to a mid-sized organization, so organizations like that, what are some of those biggest challenges?
Sure. Would you like me to go first?
Sure.
So the biggest one for me is how many different brands we have and how many different types of businesses we run in addition to a charity. So to give you an idea, JetBlue came out with a report on DBT saying they had 48 data sources last year. We have 63, and I have one person to do all of it. So you can tell how well that goes. They're not quite one-to-one. Obviously, they ingest a heck of a lot more data than we do, but we have a huge variety. And one of the biggest challenges we have is trying to link all of that together. And there are so many ways that a fan can interact and engage with us throughout the year that it's hard to tell where Jared went through year to year, show to show, game to game, brand to brand, especially as we start to branch out or try to branch out to our ball club out in Reno, maybe our African teams out in South Africa, where everything kind of fits together. It's been our biggest challenge so far.
Makes sense. Paimon?
I don't know how Jared does it. Like,
Yeah.
we maybe have about half that, and so I want to bring that back to my team. And we're grinding and working hard. It's just like, just think about the Pacers. They have probably double the amount of sources. It's crazy. I would say my answer to that question for us is prioritization. Within the one business of the Seahawks, there's so many different sub-businesses, right? People think ticket sales, ticket pricing, very common, but we also run B2B sales, like any other company, like a SaaS company selling a product. We run a CRM and we're trying to optimize that. Suites and premium sales is another one. Growing the fan base, marketing, food and beverage, retail, stadium concerts, capital investment projects in the stadium. Trying to figure out where to prioritize and organize our time and spend our focus, and just not getting too focused on the shiny project that might be the cool ticket pricing model. I'm thinking about what's actually going to help our business as a whole is definitely one of our biggest data challenges.
Yeah, and the NBA is like slightly different than the sort of mid-size, and so there's actually sometimes the opposite problem is there are many people that are working on the same things or that like kind of build something that solves almost the exact same problem and they kind of need to be consolidated. So that's one piece. I think similar to what you guys have said, the variety of sources doesn't just mean that there's like a lot to model. It also means that there's like a variety of ways to think about the business model. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we've faced is kind of honing like what is it that is good for the NBA? Like how does the NBA move forward, build like a metrics tree of sort of like key cogs that we're trying to like drive behavior in, because there are so many different ways the fan can interact. There are so many different things that we can look into. So that's sort of the thing we're striving towards now is clarifying like how do all these pieces fit together in terms of like our revenue model, our business model, and that sort of thing.
Can I ask you, how do you think about 32 different clubs? And
Yeah,
the replication
right.
aspect of things and how the cookie cutter can be the same
Yeah,
for
go
everyone?
No, exactly. So this is very interesting, and I think it's different with the NFL where it's a little bit more sort of authoritarian, top down, like explain what the plans are, and you guys like kind of react to that. Mm-hmm. The way that when I came into the NBA, they talk about it, and you might actually be able to support or deny this, was basically like it's 30 innovation centers. It's 30 places where they can like experiment and change things, and so there's been a lot of hesitation to standardize. At the same time, when you don't standardize certain practices, it becomes very complicated. When we try and share data with teams, we're trying to share from Snowflake to name a data warehouse, mm-hmm. and probably one you've never heard of, and like those are what we're trying to figure out integrations with, right? And it would be probably easier if those were all in one system, but yeah.
That's a very nice way of saying we shoot from the hip on all 30 teams.
Yeah.
Right. Well, makes sense. Just given kind of where you are and your different, data journeys. I have a feeling, however, there's probably some similarities on how you might prioritize, some of the data analytics projects. And so I guess I'm curious, how are you prioritizing, and what are your current priorities given, some of the challenges that you stated?
Yeah, so the biggest priority this year, surprisingly, is not revenue. It's data privacy. So as data privacy laws have strengthened, first-party data has become harder and harder and harder to get. And I think a lot of companies, I know a lot of companies have started to remember and realize that sports teams swim in it. And so we've had a concerning number of companies reach out to buy our information. We were at the Databricks Summit in June, and there was an entire presentation on a new ecosystem for buying fan data. That's not going to happen, at least on our team, but I am aware of a lot of other companies who have reached out to us and other teams in the meantime, trying to get a hold of your information that we just collect passively by engaging with you. I don't fully know what that looks like in the next year. I'm hoping it kind of dies and everyone forgets that we have what we have. But the biggest thing for us is how do we best protect you? How do I anonymize your information as best I can? When sponsors ask for information, how do I give them as little as I possibly can on you? How can I aggregate? How can I do anything possible to remove you from the equation and you're just a statistic rather than a person? That's the hard part for us right now, in addition to everything else changing with GDPR and CCPA. Virginia just came online. Indiana, surprisingly, now has a privacy law, and I'm surprised we have that. Colorado following. So there's a lot of different ways to build things. We're deciding just to build the GDPR and call it a day. We're even going a little bit beyond GDPR and just saying, I don't care where you live. I don't care if you've engaged with us. If I have your data, you can get rid of it. It's fine. Makes it easier for everybody, but it's also, in our opinion, the moral decision more than a legal decision. So that's my focus for this next season.
All right.
So I should or shouldn't go to Pacers.com and fill out a privacy.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. Please don't do it for Seahawks. I don't have to do it. Let's see. Privacy is crazy. That's a just wild topic that I think is multifaceted. A little bit, what I'm thinking about it is just with how we engage with our fans. A big objective for myself and my team is we want to continue to get a lot better in how we know our fans so we can meaningfully engage our fans. Making sure we're getting the right message in the right way at the right time to the right person. Sports businesses are typically pretty heavy on email to drive business and drive sales and whatnot, and organic social. So we're really trying to grow our paid media, our use of SMS, push, app, other ways to engage with our fans. And, it's definitely a marketing and digital type of job to grow those things, but it really is a data thing in multiple levels. So that's a big thing. And then we're also migrating from our old Azure SQL data warehouse to Snowflake and using dbt to help with that right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, we are just finishing up a migration to Snowflake as well and using dbt. I would say from a prioritization standpoint, during the migration, it's a lot of just get things working end to end again. But where we kind of pick what we're going to focus a lot of our data science resources on or reporting and modeling resources on is usually around decision leverage, right? There are certain things with viewership at the NBA that you can't affect, and then there are other places where you actually do feel like you have some control over the inputs to get an output. So we work a lot with the marketing team to figure out what sort of balance of budget spending would predict a certain uptick in league pass viewership, linear viewership, and so trying to avoid projects that are just reporting for reporting's sake and get to projects that are a bit more if you got these numbers, what would you do with them? Is a lens that we try to apply frequently.
Yeah, a little more the analytics side, right? Understanding your data as opposed to just actually moving it into and doing some modeling. Now, actually, how do we understand that?
Yeah.
Which is probably a good segue, I think, into the next question, which is, given this is a DBT conference, right? I'm curious how you all are leveraging or how you plan to leverage DBT moving forward to help solve some of the data challenges, some of the data-related pieces that you all just mentioned.
Yeah, so for us, the biggest draw to DBT Cloud in particular was the semantic layer. Our vendors have changed God knows how many times over the last decade. They will continue to. And again, we have so many of them that it's hard at one point to dictate this is what retail data looks like. This is what food and beverage looks like. This is ticketing. Which team's ticketing is it? They're all different. So the semantic layer, the end goal for us is once we have everything, we're on Databricks. So once we get to our gold layer in Databricks, to have one final push of what I think is starting to be called the platinum level, whatever they want to call it, in the semantic layer, which is just, this is the final stage. Diamond, whatever it is. Some weird mineral. So the hope is we have an endpoint where I just have everyone plug into on the semantic layer and say, this is what retail is. Everyone knows what that means. They don't worry about what vendor it was at a given year, so on and so forth. The other hope is with DBT, they allow us to have an API into, say, Tableau or whatever endpoint we're plugging into dashboard-wise, so I can see the sprawl and learn that we have 60 dashboards going from one table, for instance, and that's just built up over 5-6 years, and everyone just keeps forgetting it exists. dbt will help us clean that up, hopefully, and hopefully become a better, more efficient organization the next couple years, but it's going to be a busy season for us.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our use of dbt to start was essentially just in this migration. There are so many like dashboards built off of sandbox DB queries that like one references another, references 7, and if you like pick at that, you find that there's just like no governance. There's all these sort of like parallel models that are very similar but should be consolidated. So one of the biggest things that dbt was helpful with in that first migration is just dump all of that in there, add refs instead of hard codes, and just like see it, and then start to like massage that into something that feels more like a standard looking dbt project. But yeah, the semantic layer thing you mentioned, I think it's another step in the direction that dbt has always kind of pitched of like you have source conformed to business conformed, and so there are so many people that don't need to know that this ticket record came from Ticketmaster and this one came from Axis or whatever. Like they just need to know how many people bought tickets, right? And so kind of using dbt as this layer to see all of these nodes get smaller and smaller into a couple critically useful things, but then have the ability to expose how is that built if someone really wants to get in the weeds, so that they can kind of like dig through the Explorer and really answer it for themselves,
Yeah, we're earlier in dbt usage. A few months ago are doing our migration to Snowflake, and I would say with just ticketing, like our ticketing data model is insane. I'd have to ask my principal engineer, who I built our first one with, how many dbt models are in there. It's hundreds just for ticketing, because we're looking at primary sales, what's available, secondary market sales, forwarded tickets, attendance, and all of that data needs to be really clean and usable for analysts. So really just cleaning up the massive amounts of SQL scripts and stored procedures and dependencies like you were talking about that things have on each other. And even though we tried like crazy to document it in Confluence and do our best, and we have it all in GitHub, when myself or my principal engineer, the two of us that built it, when we need to change something, we're kind of like, even though I built it, I was like, when I need to add this field, what's going to happen, or something like that. So I think dbt is going to help us out a lot in making that a lot more sustainable, our core model of our business, making it a ton more sustainable, and enabling other people on our team to meaningfully add to this, and for us not to be the bottleneck. That's a big passion for me and my team, is to enable people younger in their careers to grow in their skill set and what they're doing and adding value to the business. And I think dbt is going to help us a lot with that in our current setup.
I was just going to say, yeah, that was one of the things, like dbt Cloud, especially the way the interface is very easy place to like teach people the kind of discipline of analytics engineering. The fact that like as you successfully make a model, a node shows up on a little lineage graph underneath, and you make something that refs that, and you can sort of see it be built. It helps, I think, for people who are just getting into the idea of like dry practices and version control and all that sort of thing, to be in a place that is so like visually satisfying and responsive. So that's just another piece when you're trying to teach so many people, like you said.
Yeah, like, we engineers, people talk data models, and then someone coming to it in their career, they're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then when, some of my younger analysts on my team built a data model, they're like, wow, I built a data model.
Exactly.
How cool is that? Yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned maybe some of the ways in which you're leveraging dbt, some of the benefits that your organization has seen maybe from a technical perspective, but have you seen any business-oriented benefits, whether it's like cost savings or revenue, attributable revenue generation, anything to that extent?
Yeah, so the first time ever this last season, I could tell you on a given night what we did in the arena.
Nice.
They couldn't do that for 20 years. So, well, they could, but it was very haphazard. But we now have one place where everything lives. That's been the nicest part of moving to Databricks in our case. I have one platform. If you want to work in SQL, great. You want to work in R for some unknown reason, you can do that. If you want to take that back to the classroom, please. If you want to work in Python or Scala or even just pure Spark, you can. Everything works in one location, but all of our data also lives in one location. So we can finally, on a given day, say what we did. I can start forecasting finally. We have a few more pieces I need to fit in this next season and a couple modernizations we need to implement to make existing data sets better. But the hope is within the next, I'll say 2 seasons, we're no longer thinking about where data's coming from on the analytics side. We're now worried more about just using it.
Nice.
Oh,
Go for it. Yeah, Paimon.
And this is for just data in general, or what was the question again? Sorry, I was so immersed in Jared's answer.
Yeah, just so we've talked a little bit about some of the technical benefits. I'm curious if there's been some business benefits as a result of leveraging DBT and how you've kind of implemented it. It sounds like you're maybe a little earlier in the journey.
Yeah.
But any kind of benefits that you're seeing currently, maybe.
Yeah, no, I would say for us, our executive reporting stack that ends up in Tableau mobile and desktop that our whole executive team uses every day, all day long, wherever they are traveling and stuff, they heavily rely on our platform to provide all their data points for them to help do their jobs. And there's so much in our data architecture that in some ways is fragile and can break, and those reports can break very easily. And so that's the vision here at DBT, is to make it a lot more sustainable, reliable, well-documented. Really just sustainable is the key with that, because there's so much business demand on these reports that specifically for some people, like our ticketing executive, if one ticket's wrong or one report is slightly wrong, he begins to lose trust in our product. And so making sure that uptime for certain business use cases is 100% is super key for me. And so doing all our modeling DBT, I think, is going to give me a lot more confidence in our uptime of keeping everything very dialed, very type A in that way.
Yeah, I think it's still a technical answer, but like the lack of silent failures. Like there were a lot of times in the past where like a dashboard would look normal, but like underneath it there was a table that was really important to it that wasn't running, and so it just looked kind of normal but bad. And then there would be no one that knew that like one of the tables inserting into this like just wasn't there, so the counts are completely off. So removing that, I think it's like more than just a trust thing. It's like people would action on that data, right? People would spend their time looking at that and getting it wrong. And so at least with this, those things can still happen, but it's a loud failure. We have like a Slack bot, yelling at people that the job failed or a test failed and whatnot.
Right.
And that makes a big difference.
Silent failures versus loud failures. Yeah. All right. That's a good way to look at it.
Strong and wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Strong and wrong. Well, given that DBT has also kind of pioneered this analytics engineer movement, I'm curious if you all have seen any trends in the analytics engineering space, and are leveraging analytics engineers within your organization, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I say the learning curve has definitely come down. I think the schools are still a few years behind the industry in terms of even teaching them what data engineering looks like. I went to Berkeley, so that says something. But we're starting to see the learning curve come down, and we're finally starting to see analysts who 5-10 years ago probably didn't even know what SQL was. They still worked it completely out of Excel, now starting to pick up on these tools out of college directly. The nice part for me is I can hand someone a SQL workbench and not watch them gloss over anymore, and hopefully, and just pray that they can do what they need to do. DBT has finally made that a lot easier to hit on the point where it's all visual, especially in cloud. They can see what they're working on. That's the best part for them. When they're working in even Databricks to an extent, you run a query, it spits out an output. If it breaks, you're reading Spark code. Good luck. So DBT has really simplified that whole that whole workflow for us, and we're still on core, but even then, it's been so much easier for all of them to work on. I'm excited to see how much easier it gets on cloud. But yeah, that's just generally how it's been. The learning curve has finally come down a bit.
Yeah, makes sense.
Go ahead.
Related to my point earlier, I just think it's really cool that, at least in my experience, I've seen data analysts, BI analysts, often when they want to add value to a business, grow their career and whatnot, they really have to do engineering type work, right? Like if I need to build my dashboard, to build my report to go serve my end user, but the data's wrong, well, I'm relying on another team or department or someone else to solve this for me. And at times in small sports analytics teams, I remember when we were working when there was just 4 of us or 3 of us, and I was the only person that really knew SQL. This whole analytics engineering trend is helping bring validity to people growing their careers and becoming more than just analysts and making that learning curve steep. I think in multiple ways, not only with DBT as a product, but I think in the industry as a whole, it's pretty cool to see that title emerging for people.
Nice.
Yeah, even more so at the company I worked at before this, the team the folks who started the team had like a vision of, we're going to start just with analytics engineers. We're going to build out to like 5 or 6 before we hire any analysts or any data engineers. And the theory was each of us could kind of own an entire vertical and have no blockers other than our own time. And that was really empowering. And it also meant that you built empathy like the full stack through. And so like as like a data engineer building a data model, you then also were the one consuming it and making a dashboard off of it. And so it like sharpened my data modeling thinking. And I think it's been really gratifying to also then like come to the MBA. There are analysts who have so much of that empathy for like, this is shaped weird and I don't like using it. And I get to show them like, well, here are the building blocks. You can shape it however you want. And that's like a pretty exciting concept for especially analysts.
Nice. All right. Time flies when we're having fun. Looks like we have about 5 more minutes. I definitely want to leave a couple seconds or a couple minutes, hopefully, for a couple questions. Although it is a sports panel, so we have to ask at least one sports-related question, right? So maybe on the NBA side, right, Keelan, what do you think about the season? Who's gonna, getting into the NBA
Go
Finals? Go Celtics! All right, there we go.
No, yeah, it's fun.
Jared, how are the Pacers gonna do this year?
Oh, we're looking fun this year. I
Oh,
don't know how
looking
we got.
fun.
I don't know
All right.
how we stole Obi from the Knicks, but it's the Knicks. So
Right. Okay. So it's going to be fun for the Pacers.
yeah.
And I recognize NFL. We're mid-season. Seahawks. I don't know. What do you think? What's the forecast? They're going to take off a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah, young, good, fast, competitive roster.
Gino's been good.
Gino's been great. Love our roster. Super competitive. Defense is picking it up. They played pretty well against the Bengals. Took the loss recently, but yeah, this team is competitive. It's gonna be championship caliber, I think, for many years to come. I feel good about us.
All right. Good work. All right. So questions maybe in the audience. Looks like we have one over here.
Yeah, so obviously you guys are doing business analytics. Have you ever tried to convince the sports analytics people to do run DBT after a game to recalculate whether Gino should go for it on third and 8? Do you ever see DBT extending to that side of the analytics?
Well, you're the one that actually does some
Yeah.
of it. with the
I was gonna say, do you want to
other
explain to a coach what DBT is?
No, as long as it works.
Yeah.
I would just say that good tools are good tools, and oftentimes decision makers, they just want products that are reliable and things that they're comfortable with. And I think it's definitely got the potential for that. And it'll definitely be something after we finish our migration where it's pretty embedded into our data stack that I'll go to my peer that runs our sports analytics shop, and we work pretty closely together in sharing insights with that. So I believe in it, yes, totally.
Yeah, I guess the big question is are the sports analytics folks feeling the pain that something like DBT solves right now, or do they have things that kind of work as is, right? How often are they sending out an incorrect statistic or building an analysis that's wrong? So that's kind of where I would start. We do actually use a lot of our game tracking information to look into how does certain events during the game affect the people watching. So that's an interesting. It's not quite is LeBron good at basketball, but it is still kind of the product of the basketball game,
We had one question over there.
For any of you, what process or tool in your stack right now requires complete overhaul that you see is going to take a lot of time?
We're currently on-prem Tableau, and it's a version from 7 years ago. So that right now we wouldn't be able to consume semantic layer even if it had been available and we'd stood it up. I think that's one big one is even if in the future we are using Tableau, there's a lot of BI developers at our company that love it. We need to modernize that whole part of it because it affects everything upstream as well. I have to model data in a certain way because of the bottleneck of this sort of older version of Tableau. And so that means it takes more time. I maintain things that shouldn't need to be maintained, and I don't have as much of a flexible data model. So I think this summer was Snowflake migration. maybe next year will be like let's modernize this Tableau instance and then figure out how to, make it sing with DBT a bit more.
Nice.
Which one?
Yeah.
Which one?
You started Paimon, so go ahead.
Well, I was meaning like which process. 'Cause
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a ton
exactly.
of them. Kind of like I alluded to earlier, all of our store procedures and all of our massive code base, making it more clean in Snowflake and modeled more effectively with DBT. We're in the middle of that beast right now. I can see the light, kind of. But it's really important that you do that well and do that right. Like I always say, a dashboard or report or just any data product that we build, if it's not incredibly reliable and doesn't have good uptime, it's basically useless. So making sure that we are super diligent and detailed and diligent in our process too with doing that migration is really, really important because I've been through a migration or two before where you just want to get it done, you just want to get to the end, but you got to have the patience and diligence to document and do those things and follow a process. Just like playing sports, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, on our end, it was my entire reason I came into the company, which was to get us off of an ETL, Azure Synapse. We had 2 different warehouses and 5 lakes between them for some reason. We've moved since on to Databricks. That has transformed how we do business in general. I would say the next step for us is actually pulling out a lot of the legacy tools, a lot of the holdouts that kind of get stuck in sports, things like point of sale that have been around for 20 years that exist because someone's
Brutal.
nephew's, son's, grandfather's guy, whoever owned the company, knew somebody at that point. It's just been there. We've got a lot of those. So the next hope for me is more on the guest experience side. I would love to have not just mobile ordering and kiosks available all throughout the arena, but also expand our cashierless systems. So you just walk in, grab whatever you want, and leave. The hope for me in the next couple of years is to reduce the amount of time you spend in line and on the concourse and more time in your seat. And that's a lot harder to do than you would think.
It's hard.
All right, so you can still get your hot dog, but you just spend less time in line. I like that. That works.
That's the goal.
Well, I heard this session over here clapping, so I think that is probably the end of our time. But I did want to thank our panelists here, Keelan and Paimon and Jared. Thank you so much for your time here, for participating. Thank you for DBT and the Coalesce team for having us, and obviously thank you all for joining us here in the audience today. We'll still be up here. If you have other questions, feel free to come on up. Otherwise, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.